One, from scratch. This means from the very beginning, from the very start, without using assistance, without using help. It's often used with food, like he uses it to make the food from scratch. You know, when I hear it, I think of like your grandmother bakes the cake from scratch. It means she starts with the eggs and the flour and the sugar. She does not use the starter set, or the pre-made thing. She's making it from scratch. So it's often used with food. I was trying to think of examples other than food. Maybe a car. You know, some guy maybe is really into cars and he wants to build his own car. Maybe you could use it like that. What?
Business. Yeah.
To build a business from scratch? Yeah. You could use it like that. From scratch, you know, there was nothing and he raised his own money and did everything from scratch. I think it's most common to see this with food, but you can use it for other stuff as well. Number 2, dot the I's and cross the T's. Has anyone ever heard this one before? No? Okay. So if you think about lowercase I has a dot, right? And T, especially lowercase t, you have to cross it. So what will happen if you're writing very fast? You might forget. So dot the I and cross the T. If you're writing very quickly and you are not careful. So to dot the I's and cross the T's just means to be careful. To be careful and lots of detail. A lot of times it is used with the word make sure, right? Your boss says, make sure to dot your I's and cross your T's. Also, the baseline definition is dot the I's and the T's. Usually, instead of the, you will see your. Dot your I's and cross your T's. That is what you will see the most common.
So I'm always wondering about that expression is good, but when communication with my friends or the people, if I'm using it, how they feel it. I mean, just, you know, the conversation is just using easy word and short words.
A lot of times, like I said, boss will say, if when giving an assignment, make sure to dot your I's and cross your T's. Leave no stone unturned. Make sure you do everything very thoroughly. So like that, to make, I said a lot of times use with the word make sure, you know. If I'm giving you some task, make sure to dot your I's and cross your T's. How else? What would be another situation to use it? Maybe when you are explaining how thorough you were. You could use dot I really dotted my I's and crossed my T's. I spent a lot of time on this, you know, when telling how much you tried. In those situations, you can use it.
I have actually same feeling like that.
Yeah.
But in my mind, you know, if we can say, you know, they can understand, then I think no problem. But what if, you know, your boss say to you like, you know, this expression, but you don't understand. So rather than speaking, maybe, you know, hearing might be, you know, more helpful to understand these expressions. That's my, you know.
Those would be two instances. Usually, dot your I's and cross your T's. You know, kind of like telling you, do it carefully, be careful. Whether it's from your boss or some video or self-help book. You know, reminding you, make sure to dot your I's and cross your T's, like that. I think is the most common way I see it. Number 3, consistency. So this, really the number 1 meaning for this is just consistency, meaning it is the same. Something is consistent, it is dependable, it is the same. Time, and it's the same time after time after time. It is consistent. He uses it to talk about food. You know, the food must be consistent. It cannot be, not in each restaurant it needs to be consistent, but also from restaurant to restaurant. If you have the steak on Tuesday it should taste the same as when you have the steak on Friday. If you have the steak in California, it should taste the same as if you have the steak in Florida. It needs to be consistent. It needs to be the same, dependable. You can use this word for someone's work. It needs to be consistent. They are always producing good work, solid work. The opposite is inconsistent. If someone is turning in their work late, or sometimes it's just a really poor effort, but sometimes it's good, that is inconsistent. If it is always bad, that would actually be consistent, right? Because it's always bad. If showing up to work consistently on time, always the same, dependable. So those three are good, and I think 4, 5, and 6 are really easy. Number 4, add in. Something that's added, included, as part of something else. How does he use it? We also want to add in what people feel is healthier. Add that to the menu. You might see the word add on. Sometimes I think add on is like for an app or for you're going to usually purchase something, add on. Add in is just included in there. Go around. Again, this one's pretty easy. To go around, go from here to there, place to place. They were talking about go around the country, I believe, to all the different restaurants. I think that's how he said it. Go around. We go around to every restaurant, every restaurant.
What's the difference from get around?
Good question. Get around is talking how can I explain? It's usually talking about like transportation, like how are you going to get around DC? Are you going to use taxi? Are you going to use the subway? Are you going to use a bicycle? How are you going to get around? Go around is just talking about
Walk.
No, you could go around. It doesn't matter whether you're walking or driving. Go around. That's not really important. The way to get around, usually when it's used, it's usually used in that kind of context, like how are you going to get around? I'm going to get around by car or something like that. Usually, it's a good question. Number 6, make sure. I think you guys all know this one. To make sure, double check. Might be a similar expression. To make certain, to make sure. There's no doubt. You leave no doubt. Any questions about those six ones? I think 4, 5, 6 are pretty easy. 1 and 2 are useful idioms. 3.
Is there any difference between from scratch and from the bottom?
You wouldn't say he made the food from the bottom. From the bottom. When would you use that? From the bottom, or sometimes from the bottom up. You mentioned company. You could say from scratch. He built this company from scratch. I actually think it's better to say, he built this company from the bottom up. In that one, you would use up. Just from the bottom is maybe used, it's used a lot in like people's personal story. He really started from the bottom, and worked his way up the corporate ladder or something like that. He started from the bottom. That would be the way I would recommend to use it. Like someone starting from nothing, from the bottom is kind of the same to me. From the bottom up, sometimes they use up on there. That's usually when they're talking about a company a lot of the time. Started this from the bottom up.
Actually, the Koreans use that expression in Korean.
When talking about what?
Yes, like that.
Company? Talking about like a company from the bottom.
When we are drinking.
From scratch can be used you guys are all Koreans speaking English as a second language, so I would, as long as you understand from scratch, I would just use from scratch for food, personally. And then if you're talking about a company, from the bottom up, from nothing, like that.
From scratch is, I think, two meanings. One is from the very beginning.
Yeah.
People can use from scratch. And one thing is, I want to start my restaurant, but no knowledge about it, but just go. So can I use the from scratch, right?
From scratch, you could use it. If you say from scratch, it's more it more implies that like you're doing everything yourself. Like maybe you built the building, or something like that. It's not so much talking about your knowledge. Maybe you could have great knowledge in food, but you built that company from scratch. It's not more talking about your knowledge. So if you're trying to use that, there may be some other ways to express that.
Usually when you talk about startup, maybe